All right, well, joining us now is Archduke Eduard Habsburg. He is the Hungarian ambassador to the Vatican and a relative of two people who are on the road to sainthood. He's also the author of the new book, Building a Wholesome Family in a Broken World, Habsburg Lessons from the Centuries. All right, good morning, Ambassador.
Good morning from Rome.
Good morning.
Awesome, Rome. That sounds amazing. You must be there for your work as the ambassador to the Vatican. We're going to talk about your book in a minute, but I wanted to talk about your family history because you're related to Blessed Karl of Austria and servant of God, Empress Zita. I know Blessed Karl passed away before you were born, but Empress Zita was alive until 1989. So since they're related to you, did you grow up hearing stories about them or praying for Blessed Karl's intercession?
Yes, in fact, I'm in the lucky position to have met Empress Zita as a child and had a longish conversation with her, got first-hand stories about Blessed Karl from her, and we were all impressed by how saintly and how upright and how incredibly gentle and friendly she was. Empress Zita was someone who, if she was in a room with several people, she would see to it that everybody got involved in the conversation. Even my younger sister, who was far smaller than me, she would turn to her and say, "And what do you think about this?" So she respected everybody, and you could feel how she did exactly the same thing when she was empress as a young woman in her 20s, married to Blessed Karl. And she also told us about the coronation of Blessed Karl in Hungary and how it deeply affected him because he made a promise to God to look after his people in that moment, and that this was probably the moment that impressed him most in his life. So we are very blessed to have met at least with half of this saintly couple of Habsburgs.
That's beautiful. Let's get into the book a little bit, if you could. Building a Wholesome Family in a Broken World covers everything from dating through marriage and parenthood. And you have 5 items on the spouse bucket list. I wonder if you could talk to us about that and maybe tell us 2 or 3 of those.
First of all, nothing of the things that I write about are my own invention. This is all, as you say in America, it's all duh. It's something everybody should know, but has gone totally lost in our world in the last 30, 40 years, I feel. And so I thought it's good that a Habsburg writes everything down. So my bucket list is something of a checklist. If you meet someone and you want to figure out whether this could be your potential spouse for life, I have 5 points. 3 are non-negotiable and 2 are negotiable. So unfortunately, on the first spot, I don't have looks hot or is attractive. But my first point is faith. I strongly recommend anybody to marry a Catholic person. And if you're not Catholic already, become a Catholic, because I believe that the Catholic faith, the Catholic Church, the Catholic sacraments give you the best set of rules and helps for everyday life to live a decades-long happy marriage. So faith is my first point. I strongly recommend to marry somebody who shares your faith. If this is not the case, at least to work on it, that your spouse or husband finds the way to faith, because you can far better react to all the vicissitudes of life if you have faith together. You can pray together. You have God in the middle of your relationship. So that's point number 1. Just like Blessed Karl, I may add. Point number 2 is family. You will have to figure out whether the other person has the same ideas about family as you have. Many people just stumble into a relationship, then they live together, then at some point they decide, do we want to get married? Then they begin to talk about, and that's having it all backwards. You should know before you begin whether the other person is ready for a large family, for accepting the children that God wants to send you, and whether you're ready also for the consequences of that, which means you may not be able to live in a very cool apartment downtown, but you might have to live somewhere outside so you can afford housing. All of that comes with family, and you should check it out before you get more interested in another spouse, potential spouse. The third one is a very unpopular word today, but very important, is chastity. You're looking for someone who lives a chaste life, who really tries to live a chaste life. Has become very difficult in our world today we are bombarded with things that make it difficult for all of us. But I believe that this is the basis of a good and holy marriage. Blessed Karl was famous for being a chaste man, and he even was famous for, if people made rude or dirty jokes in the army, to intervene and say, no, stop, we don't do this here. So look for someone chaste, and men try to be chaste, women try to be chaste. So that's 1, 2, and 3. If those 3 are 100%, then you can be pretty certain that you have a good chance for a very happy lifelong marriage and fulfilling marriage. And 4 and 5 is what I would call character compatibility, whether the characters fit together. Usually you should be different, but compatible. And a good rule of thumb is, are we at peace when we're together? Do we do each other good when we're together? That's one. And second is what I would call cultural surroundings. If you're a city girl and you're used to your frappuccino and you fall in love with this guy from the Outer Hebrides who is fishing, think really well whether you think that your love can conquer all, because this is 2 different words. But again, the most important point here is, don't cohabitate, don't live together before you made this decision and have the sacrament. Because if you do that, then you pour sentimental sauce over your judgment, and you cannot judge whether, with your ration, with your head, you cannot judge whether the other person is right. I think if most people would do that before they get into a relationship, I think we would have many, many more happy marriages.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the 3 non-negotiables were faith, basically on the same page about family, and then chastity. Yes. I'm going to share this interview with my siblings because they're both single. All right, so I know you have 6 kids. In general, what would you say is your advice for parents to keep their kids in the faith?
Well, it's very easy. My father had a rule of thumb that he taught us when we were still children. Children don't do what their parents tell them. Children do what their parents do. It's very easy. So if you as parents regularly go to the sacraments, if you go to Mass, if you pray the rosary in the family every day and not just sometimes when you're in a good mood, if they see their father queuing up for confession, if they see their mother with a rosary by the hand when she's in the kitchen, if they see that their parents' faith is the most important thing, then they will have a good chance of doing this later on. The problem is that the moment they come outside, they go to school, they have friends, all of this will be challenged very strongly. But if you, and that's the most important element, is if you have many siblings, if you don't go for a 2-children family, but for a bigger one. And I always say, if you think that 2 children is tough, have 3, everything gets easier. And that's true. That's really true. I can tell you from the experience of many of my friends, the more siblings you have, the more the children take their cues and their rules and their ideas from their siblings, and it's easier to accept than from the parents. So all of this together, I think, if you have a large family, that's one of the central points of my book, then most of the things that are good for your children will come automatically. You learn that you're not the center of the universe. You learn that you're not entitled to have the latest iPad or phone, because a family with many children can't afford that. And you learn to share, you learn to look out for the weaker ones, and you learn to find joy in being carried by your siblings and your family. That's what we experience with our children. So really, go for the greatest thing. Go for many children. I can only recommend it from all my heart.
It's so beautiful. Well, Archduke Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. People can get your book at sophiainstitute.com. You've also written another book that came out recently as well in the last year or 2. So a lot of good stuff there. We are so grateful, and God bless you.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye.
Of course.